voltage for the CPU to run at. Now we hit enter and we go down here to fixed mode. And you can see here I've actually already booked in the voltage that you guys should be operating this overclock at if you just want guaranteed results. Of course, every CPU will differ. For instance, my CPU here at 3.8 gigahertz can do it at around 1.3 volt, which is a lot lower. So if you have the time to custom tune your CPU to its voltage, since it's a thing called just the silicon lottery where you can get a CPU that clocks higher at a certain voltage than another, then I recommend you doing that. But if you're just in your first time overclocking, you just want to get some extra performance out of Ryzen, then I just recommend dialing in 1.37 there. And also CPU load line calibration, I don't know what's going on here. It was set on auto, now it's like gone back to level 1. I guess that's a BIOS bug that we're live diagnosing here, but hey, we want to change that to level 2. So on both fronts here, both the system on chip load line calibration, change that to level 2, and on the CPU load line calibration level 2 as well. Now this is interesting because you can see here level 1 I've found in the past, and even on this board it does like to overvolt just a little bit. So level 2 I find is a great balance for when you're loading up the CPU. You get a thing called V droop. Essentially the CPU drops down, and this can cause crashing on overclocks. So level 2 I find just keeps that voltage delivery just so smooth to the CPU. So we've got locked those in, both level 2, both 3.7 there, overclock mode on the voltage, and then we're going to go here and we're not going to touch the overvolting or overcurrent protection. These are put in place to protect you guys from damaging your hardware, so I recommend leaving them on enabled unless you're a very advanced overclocker, and you're probably not going to be here if you are. But here we go here, we got DRAM voltage, we can leave that on auto because we're not locking in the XMP profiles, and all the other voltages here, you guys can feel free to just copy my settings, copy paste, and put them in, even though they are, I believe, just stock voltages on these ones. So once you guys have locked in those settings, I then want you to go to the advanced tab up here and go to CPU configuration. Now, this is just a personal thing, I find it just helps with stability so much on even the AM3 platforms when I was overclocking them. Go to C6 mode and just disable that. And essentially, because we've got AMD Cool and Quiet already in place, that's AMD's version of downclocking the CPU when it's not in use. So we want to disable that, and then go down here to AMD CBS, and then go into Zen Common Options. And now down here we'll see Global C State Control. I also like to disable this completely too, as I find I have had some problems in the past, even when I was testing Ryzen initially, where games would crash with these settings on. So now that we're done there, we can go to Exit, save changes and exit, and then reboot our computer into Windows. Now if you also can't boot into Windows at these settings, you might want to lower the clock speeds just a little bit, and then or raise the voltage just a little bit more. So now that we're in Windows, we can essentially stress test our CPU to make sure things are working properly. So I like to open up a program called Hardware Monitor. So this is free to download, it's easy, you don't have to pay anything for it, and it'll essentially tell you what your CPU speed, what the AMD CPU speeds are running at. So we can see here 3.8 gigahertz, all cores, it's doing its job. And if we run into Cinebench, we can then start a Cinebench run just to check that it's working. Of course, you would want to get a stress test program and run it for quite some time to make sure things are really stable. You can also jump into games, but I find Cinebench, even just running a quick Cinebench run, is going to tell you if your computer is either completely unstable or near stable. So if it completes this run, it's either stable or near stable, which is a really good thing considering how quick you can get a reaction out of it, so to speak. So once we've done that, we can get our CPU score there. We can see it's pretty strong, 1624. That's the first part of this guide done. For the guys out there who just want to get a quick overclock, get some quick results, that's it. So now we're going to move over to part 2, where we're jumping into the BIOS and we're going to get advanced, baby. So now it's time for part 2, or the advanced part. This is where things start to get a little tricky, so if you start getting stressed, don't guys, I don't want you to get stressed, because then you'll start losing your hair, and you know, generally all the bald guys I know, they don't want to go bald, so I don't want you guys to go bald, okay? So try not to get stressed, I'll guide you through this. So first part here, we're going to overclock tweaker, and we're actually going to set this stuff that we did before back to auto. CPU frequency and voltage change that back to audio. RAM speeds, we're not going to touch that just yet, because we do that last after we've done our overclocks. And then here we can go to overclock mode, leave that there, go down to CPU vCore voltage, change that back to auto, and then change this back to level 2. I don't know why it changed back to auto. And then yeah, that's about all we do in that tab. So essentially resetting what we did before in some parts and keeping some other settings in place. Now we're going to the advanced tab here. And we go to CPU, we go down to AMD CBS, then we go to Zen Common Options, and then we move in here to a thing called Custom Core P States, and we go accept. So this is getting tricky now, guys. So basically what you want to do is, I like to disable from Custom P State 3 onwards, I like to disable that, and we go into Custom P State 0 first. And go to custom here. So this is essentially where you're getting into the root of the CPU itself. P-State 0 is essentially that single core boosting methodology with XFR, but because we can take control of this and manually set it with P-State 1 being the same values, we'll get onto that later, we can essentially lock all cores in at our highest overclock for 24/7 stability. So what we've got here is essentially looking at a heap of numbers, and they're essentially to do with a 30-bit, 32 hex sequence. So the values range from 00 to FF, 00 being the lowest and FF being the highest. And it's weird because in P-State 0 VID, it actually works in an inverse relationship. If you go down in these values, you get the lowest denominator. If you go down in value, you get a higher V-core. So it's kind of interesting there, but what we're going to do is we're going to lock in, so we can see here we change from 1.8 to 1.7 and we keep going down. The values here, essentially, I'll put these in the description below because this is getting tricky. All these values will set in a number of frequency and also voltage. So to get your head around it, I'll just put a list in the description below. You can read from there, but essentially it works with hex, and you can, for instance, lock in a 1 and get a 4.025 gigahertz overclock. Or if we can go down to A0, we should be getting a 4 gigahertz overclock. Now before that, I think it will be 9F, will be a 3.975 gigahertz overclock. So we're going down in the value and it's responding with the overclocks. The mid volume here, the DID, we generally don't want to touch that. Personally, I've found that it running at the state B clock, this is essentially like your B clock setting. This at the state value of 8 is working perfectly fine. Everything's butter smooth. I have no need to change this. If you want to change this though, you may get, see, as we go up in value here, it'll actually lower the clock rates there. So the values are a little bit tricky there too. So as you do that, you can change the B clock essentially. I like to leave it at 8, and essentially if you do change this, just remember that it may change your memory clocks too. So I'd like to leave that one alone, so we're just going to focus on FID and VID. And here we're going to lock in your desired overclock. So for instance, if you want a 9 gigahertz overclock, it will be 9C, and we'll get 3.9 gigahertz overclock. Or if you want to lock in my max overclock, it's A1. So that's where my CPU topped out at, guys, was 4.025 gigahertz. And the voltage for that, I believe, was 3.1393 volts. So that's where I ended up with my sweet spot. You guys will have to tinker this to where you can find your max CPU speed and where its sweet spot is for voltage. That's up to you guys to find that. This is where mine's at, and I'll put those codes in the description below so you can try and lock them in yourselves. But once we've done that, once we've found that with P-State 0, we can then go down to P-State 1 and do the exact same thing for this value here. And lock that in manually. And what we'll have here is the exact same overclock with P-State 1 as P-State 0. And then for this last one, we can also just leave that on custom, and we can then have a 2.2 gigahertz down clock. So essentially when the CPU is not in use, it will start throttling down and essentially using less power, which is a good thing if you guys are going to be using this thing 24/7. Anything below that, I generally don't find the need for personally. I just find it can sometimes cause problems and headaches, which you don't need when you're editing videos or anything like that. So that's my custom settings there. I find it runs smooth as butter. Even in the infant stages of Ryzen, this thing is running so well. So once we're done with that, we can then save changes and boot into Windows. So now we're going to move on into the benchmark here, F1 2016, which is actually a great benchmark for CPU and GPU at the same time, especially at 1080p. So we've got here the graphics options here. In video mode, we've got it with SMAA on, and also 16-speed anisotropic filtering and VSync off, of course. And then we've got here for the settings ultra high. Let's see how the AMD Ryzen CPU handles this at 1080p. Let's get in there and put that on benchmark. And while we're doing this, I'll actually talk about some extra things with Ryzen. So firstly, the memory. If you guys have your CPU locked in at its sweet spot overclock, then what you want to do after that is go back in and try and get your RAM as high as possible, which on the AM4 platform does make a little bit more of a difference than it does to the Intel platform. So you can do this easily by just enabling the XMP profiles. First up, that's the best thing you're going to get. If you can't do that, then drop your drop your megahertz a little bit on the memory, say down to 2066. If that doesn't work, drop it down to 2400. I did have this problem initially when I got the AMD CPU in with the ASRock Gaming K4, where I couldn't even boot my memory up at 2600 megahertz, so I had to drop it down to 2400 megahertz. Lo and behold, a few BIOS updates later, I can now run it at 2933. So you can see with the microcode updates coming into place, memory speed should only get better and better, which is a great thing. Also, another thing is if you are crashing, if your computer's crashing and you're just getting frustrated, just take a breather. It's normal, guys, especially when you're overclocking. Though make sure all your hardware is connected properly. Things like a CPU that's not connected properly can cause permanent damage. Though if you have everything connected properly, then all you have to do is clear the CMOS with the pin, the jumper, just push that to the right and then back to the left, or the clear CMOS button, or worst case scenario, you can just take out the battery, turn everything off with a circular battery, and you should be back to normal again. Remember, at these settings around these overclocks, you're not going to damage anything if everything's set up properly, because there's over voltage protections in place that protect your parts from getting damaged anyway. So I actually haven't come into any problems ever dealing with sort of these sweet spot overclocks. So that's a really good thing. Don't be too afraid, but it may get frustrating at times. Just keep that in mind. Also, there is the high performance mode in Windows, which you will want to turn on. And for me personally, I also like to turn off the USB suspend setting, which I have had on the AM4 platform so far. My keyboard cutting out sometimes just randomly. So when I disabled this, I no longer had any problems with my keyboard or mouse cutting out. So I recommend you do that. And also, if you want to, I highly recommend tweaking your Windows for performance. I've got a Windows 10 optimization guide. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys. Awesome if you want to get that, just a little bit more performance out there and get your Windows running as best as it can. Other settings like high performance or HPET, I'm not going to test that yet, as again my computer is running really well at the moment. I don't need to really change anything. It's running completely smooth. So anyway, let's move on now to the next benchmark. And for the last benchmark is For Honor. We're going to run this at 1080p at ultra settings or extreme settings here. You probably hear that GTX 1080 Ti reference blasting in the background, but I'm also going to talk about some final minute things with benchmarking Ryzen. And games, as always, this is why I'm running the games for you guys. They're a fantastic way to test stability on your overclocks. Now, if you get a CPU 00 error, that's most likely because you either need to drop the clock speeds and or increase the voltages. So just keep that in mind. Another thing too is that when you are seeing these results on YouTube, like you're probably seeing it's a little bit choppy, but trust me guys, on the monitor that I'm looking at right now, it is so damn smooth. It's just smooth as butter, and on the previous benchmark I did. Really one thing about Ryzen is it does play extremely smooth in games, so that's one thing I'm liking about this CPU at the moment. And this is even with a GTX 1080 Ti. You can see there the GPU is being utilized near 100%, which is great news. For me personally, I'm going to be using this as a workstation CPU, and also on my 1440p ultra wide monitor at 100 Hz. So if I get over 100 Hz or 100 FPS average, I'm going to be completely happy with that, as I'm not really a competitive gamer nowadays and pretty much has been. But with that said guys, if you enjoyed this overclocking tutorial, then be sure to hit that like button. And if you have any frustrations or anything that you have during the overclocks, then be sure to drop a comment in the comment section below, or check out the website www.techcity.tv/forum, and we'll have some threads over there in terms of Ryzen overclocking. But with that said guys, I'm going to get on out of here, and I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.
What's up guys, Jace2Cents here, and you know what? I'm impatient. I don't want to wait a whole nother month to spoil someone with some elite PC goodness. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this party started a little bit early here, celebrating the 1 million subscriber giveaway. This channel has allowed me to play around with a lot of very high-end hardware that is otherwise unobtainable by most people, even the extreme PC enthusiast. can't get their hands on some of the hardware that I get a chance to play with. So that's why today I want to start a giveaway that's literally going to make someone's day. Now, one lucky winner is going to win everything that you guys are about to hear. So let's go ahead and kick it off with my Intel 5960X CPU. This CPU is actually sentimental to me. It's the very first high-end elite CPU I ever owned, and this is directly out of Skunkworks. It's the exact same CPU. So to say that it's got some sentimental value to me would be an understatement. Now you need a way to keep it cool, so I'm going to be giving away my NZXT Kraken X62 cooler. It's going to do a fantastic job at keeping the CPU cool, and you'll still be able to clock it well over 4 gigahertz with this cooler. Now you need something to put it in, so of course EVGA has joined this giveaway by donating an X99 for the Win K. It's going to give you amazing overclocking stability, great cooling, a very solid motherboard, and it's got all the features you would expect, like USB Type 3.1 and all the other features that you would expect with a X99 Enthusiast motherboard. Now for memory, I'm giving away 32 gigabytes of G.Skill's Trident Z DDR4 quad channel memory. Way more memory than anyone would ever need for gaming, and a great sweet spot amount of memory for anyone doing content creation, editing, VMs, programming, whatever. Might as well go overkill where we can, and I think 32 gigs is a pretty good number for that. Now for a graphics card, EVGA's also thrown in their GTX 1080 ICX. That's their new ICX cooler with the 9 sensors on there, allowing you to monitor everything happening on your PCB, VRMs, GPU, memory temps, the whole deal. So that is going to allow you to run pretty much any game you want at some very high, elite frames per second. I mean, who wouldn't like that? Of course, you need something to put these parts in, so Fractal Design has also donated a Define S case. It's the exact same case I used in the surprise build I did for my friend. It's got a lot of room in there. You can upgrade to custom water cooling later if you want to. It's going to fit the Kraken with no problem. A tremendous amount of airflow, so you're going to keep all these parts nice and cool. So you guys can take your hardware and your storage and throw in a power supply, and you have got really an extremely high-end system right here that's going to last you for years to come. Okay, here comes the boring part, guys, all the legality stuff. This is open worldwide. It's open worldwide except for where giveaways are prohibited. Believe it or not all countries like people to get things for free, and if you live in one of those countries, I apologize. Now for everyone else, look in the description of this video. You're going to see a list of the parts that are being given away. You're also going to see a link to the Gleam page, which keeps everything fair. All you have to do to enter, though, is be subscribed to the channel and a bonus entry for following on Twitter. That's it. There's not like a list of 25 different things you can do. One entry per subscriber and Twitter follower. If you're already subscribed, it'll verify that, and then you'll be good to go. Other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. Now, if you happen to live in a country that's got VAT tax or any sort of import tax, you guys are going to be responsible for the taxes on this stuff as you receive it. So unfortunately, there's probably going to be some cost involved to receive this product. I apologize for that. It's out of my control. I have no control over that whatsoever. And no, I'm not going to be putting down a value of 0 on all of this to try and avoid import taxes, because that would be called fraud. Now, it's going to take about another month to hit the 1 million subscribers, so this is going to be ongoing until we hit that number. As soon as the timer runs out, we will pick a winner, and it will be announced in a giveaway announcement video. It will also be announced on Twitter. Now, you have to claim your prize within 48 hours of being notified of winning. If you don't, your entry will be forfeited and a new person will be drawn. It's actually happened in the past where someone didn't respond in time, and they responded after a new winner was already chosen, and unfortunately for that guy, he didn't get his prize. So check your email, check your spam filters, and yeah, other than that, guys, good luck. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Initializing. Alert. Your core is under attack.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hearthstone video. This one is very shortly done after the one we just made. This one should be a lot shorter, but new information just came out about the Rogue quest, so I figured I'd talk about it because the quest is absolutely magnificent design-wise. Blizzard usually gives you some blunt force trauma level of obviousness when they give you a quest, or, you know, they're like, summon Murlocs, play Murlocs, summon Death Rattle minions, jam it in your face. They want to give you a quest that is very easy to understand and complete, and they want to give you tools like Jade Golem and Kazakas, where when you build the deck, you know exactly what you're doing with it. This time around for Rogue, they created something that is going to let players determine